Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for another round of stories right here on Thailand Bound. If you haven't been here before, my name's Peter and this morning I'm going to be reading you out 3 viewers' stories. Now I'm very happy to tell you that these stories have never been read out on my story. As I always say, they might have been read out on another channel, but definitely not on mine. Okay, before we get into the first of 3 stories, I can't remember if I mentioned this or not last week, but I'd put in a poll out there and I asked you guys, did you want me to cut out some of the details in the stories, because somebody kind of complained a little bit, not complained, but they just mentioned that in the stories sometimes there's far too many details and they thought it would be a good idea for me to kind of chop them out of the story and just get to the meat and veg, as it were. So I put out a poll and I asked everybody, do you want me to cut out the details or just carry on as they are, the way I edit them, the full story? And I'm happy to say that most people have kind of agreed with me and said, no, just keep the stories as they are, because we need the build up to the story to get a full picture. Okay, so that's exactly how I'm going to proceed from now on. When I get a story, I just edit out any bad language or anything that YouTube might have a problem with, and I tell the story in its entirety. Okay, so I hope everybody's going to be happy with that. And with that, let's jump into the first of 3 stories this week.
สวัสดีค่ะ
I sent in a story a few weeks back. It was about Joe and Ploy as you baptized them. I've repeated that story so many times to many of my friends that Thailand has become, in my mind, the paradise I'll never ever reach. Well, things have changed a few years back and I'm catching up. Please feel free to interject during this story as you see fit. I actually enjoy your tidbits of additional information. It is like spices on a tasty meal. In 2021, as COVID restrictions were being lifted, I'd accepted a job that required a minimum of 25% travel. That would be that I would travel at least 1 week in every 1 month. Most trips were outside the US and 50% of those trips were going to East to Asia. Within 6 months after starting my job, I realised that I can intertwine a week of vacation with my trips, and thus my travel would be paid by my company. Do not ask me what my business is, as I do not want to advertise where the golden goose has laid its eggs. To the rest of the mongers out there, the first time I inserted 3 days leisure into my travel was while doing a trip to Thailand, Bangkok, and I'm afraid that I haven't been able to take proper advantage of what Bangkok has to offer. I spent most of those 3 days hanging around the pool and the bar, expecting beautiful women to rain down on me. But the second time, some 3 months later in the middle of July, I was prepared, and as soon as the business part was concluded, I took a taxi straight to Pattaya. If you plan it ahead, you can pay as little as 1,000 baht, less than $30 for the trip from the hotel in Bangkok to the hotel in Pattaya. I must confess, in the 3 months from the first to the second Thailand trip, I watched many YouTube tutorials, as well as other venues which had advice for foreigners visiting Thailand, including your channel too. I do have stories about the many times I visited Thailand since, but today I shall concentrate on 2 visits, one in July of 2023 and the other October 2024. By 2023, I already had some 6 or 7 visits to Thailand and I was becoming quite familiar with the Monga area in Pattaya, Soi 6 to Pattaya Beach Road, to South Pattaya Road, to Soi Buakhao, etc. However, I realised that every visit would surprise me with some new experiences. On a 2023 visit, on my second evening in Pattaya, walking the beach road towards Walking Street, I turned into Soi 13/4 looking at some t-shirt vendors selling Pattaya shirts. You know the ones, you've seen them before. Good boys go to heaven and bad boys go to Pattaya. As I was walking, I noticed a side street branching to my right that was more lively than usual. So like a fly attracted by light, I turned that way. I sat at one of the beer bars and promptly I was approached by a gorgeous hostess asking me what I would like to drink. I asked her to give me a minute to decide what I'd like to drink and with whom I'd like to have a drink with. I had a bottle of water with me and I took a sip from it. I looked around and I was surprised at the number of absolute stunners that were at this bar. All tall with long legs and cascading long hair, absolutely gorgeous figures. I thought I was a pattaya veteran already and I was about to be schooled big time. My eyes settled on a petite lady. I'm not very fond of tall women, and I signalled her over. When she came, I asked if I could buy her a lady's drink, since I was somewhat thirsty and I didn't want to drink alone. That day turned out to be particularly hot and the evening brought very little relief. The open bar's fans were not making too much of a difference anyway. I know that the hostess's job is to get customers to buy drinks and ladies' drinks, but I wanted to at least give the impression that she had a choice. Also, when I say that I spoke to anyone Thai, please understand that I was heavily using the Google Translate on my phone. Between other things in our conversation, I asked her how old she was. She looked very young, but she produced an ID and pointed out that her birth date and she was 27. I was amazed. She looked much younger than that. She showed me that her name was Pun, and then she told me that she lived with her sisters and grandma somewhere east of where we were. She further told me that she worked at a bar for almost a month now and it was her first job in Pattaya. Since they all moved from Ubon Ratchathani area, we both looked up her village on Google Maps on my phone. While she was speaking on her phone to the Google Translate app, I watched her and seeing her face and slim figure, I was becoming smitten with her appearance. If properly paced, a conversation between Connect 4, Jenga and a pool game can easily extend to 3 to 4 hours. While I had only 2 beers and 2 shots, she had 5 or 6 lady drinks and she was finishing her last drink. I asked her if I could bar fine her and she said yes. The bar bill was about 1,000 baht, approximately $30. The bar fine was 450 baht, approximately $15, and her fee was only 1,500 baht, about $40, which was easily within my price range. My hotel was on Soi 11, so we took a BART bus to my hotel. As we were walking along Soi 11 towards my hotel, I felt her mood change, and once we were in my hotel room, she was clearly uncomfortable. I acted normally, opened the balcony door and I invited her to sit outside on the chair and open a cold chang from my fridge, sharing it with her. I wanted to give her some time to relax a bit. We were looking over the pool, and even though there was a clear rope across the entrance with a placard saying in Thai and English stating that the pool was closed for some repairs, there was a foreign couple swimming in the unit area, clearly stark naked. We both looked and smiled. Those people were fixing to get into some serious trouble very soon. As we entered back into the room, Pun started removing her clothes, revealing beautiful body that was clearly having an effect on me. She left her underwear on and asked if she could use the bathroom, and I signalled that it was okay. When she entered the bathroom, she locked the door, which was quite surprising to me, since I always joined other Thai girls for showers on previous encounters. I counted that on her being inexperienced, and after removing my clothes, I wrapped the other towel around my waist and entered the bathroom for a shower by myself. When she came out, still wrapped in the towel, I showered, dried and came back to a darkened room, barely lit by the bathroom light. Pun was in bed with a cover all the way to her neck. I got in and initiated the aerobics. Oh no, I reached towards the side light switch and the light flooded the room. She crouched over her knees with her face down saying something and pointing out towards the switch. I sat up and asked her, "Pun, are you a lady boy?" She kept saying the same thing and pointing at the light. As she was speaking, I heard her starting to cry, and while shifting my position around, I noticed a large bruise on the left side of her rib cage and a whole bunch of dark bruises on her legs and her arms. I sat on the edge of the bed and placed my hand on her tiny back, trying to calm her down. I said, "Pun, it is okay. You do not need to cry. I'm not angry with you. I should have asked, or you should have told me." Eventually, I reached for my phone and used Google Translate and played the voice translation to her over and over until her crying subsided. I offered her a towel to wipe her face. She revealed a large bruise on her left cheek and a black left eye. Someone really did a number on this poor human being. I lost my interest in any aerobics. At that point, my humanity kicked in. I concentrated on calming her down. Eventually, she sat next to me with a towel over her lap, and we spoke at length about her situation. 2 days before, some foreign guy had beat her up when he discovered that Pun was a ladyboy. Since she did not report it to the police and tried to conceal the bruises with makeup, she went back to the bar trying to make enough money to cover the rent for her room for her and her sisters and grandma, even if only by ladies' drinks. She saw me drinking the beers and shots and hoped that I would be tipsy enough and going to be easily satisfied with her other skills before I would realise who she really was. I was floored with emotions and disgusted with my fellow human beings, not because of what she was, but because of what she had to endure to scrape up a living by any means she could. I told her I was not angry as I understood her situation. I told her that I was sorry she had to go through what she went through and she had nothing to fear from me. I also told her that I was happy to have her sleep over as it was now 2 a.m. in the morning. She started crying again and said, "You want woman? I can call my sister." I thought that Google Translate might have messed up, and between sighs and tears, I saw her texting in Thai. I felt terrible about her sadness and the tears flowing so freely, so I turned off the light and held that small human being in my arms, speaking with a calming tone. Eventually, I felt her body losing the tension and becoming more and more relaxed as she eventually put her hand on my chest, saying over and over again, "Thank you" in Thai. From here on in, things took an unexpected turn, which to this day surprises me. Having Pun looking up at me with her teary eyes in the dim light from the bathroom, with my hands around her body holding her in my arms, and watching the gorgeous face, despite the bruise feeling her soft skin and her heart beating next to my chest, well, you guess what happened next. I did not expect it, and she definitely did not expect it. We were in the middle of some aerobics when I heard a light knock on my door. Pun ran to the door, and before I could even get out of bed, she had opened the door. I heard some soft but excited conversation, and the door closed. From around the bathroom hallway, Pun came holding the hand of a perfect replica of her. If it wasn't for the other being closed, I would have thought I was seeing double. It was the sister she spoke of earlier. Her name was Jang. Jang spoke some English and thanked me for being gentle to her sister, and then, without much talk, started undressing. Just like Pun, she took the towel, wrapped it around herself, waist, and went to the bathroom for a quick shower. When Jang came from the bathroom, I was engaged with Pun, and as Jang climbed into bed, Pun moved off, allowing her sister to step in. From here on in, feel free to imagine almost any combination of the three of us. Jang was born with all the natural equipment of a female, and apart from the small defect of Pun had and the bruises, there was absolutely no difference between the two of them. Jang and Pun moved in bed so flawlessly that in the dim light coming from the bathroom, I could hardly tell who I was engaged with, unless I'd reach around and feel for a defect or no defect. We woke up at 11 a.m. or so. The aerobics were truly out of this world, and the sisters hugged me, one on each side. There was no jealousy or competing from them. It was like they had a job to do and they just got on with it. We left my hotel sometime afternoon because it took forever to Pun to conceal her bruises all over again. Jang helped her with the makeup while I shaved. We went to have brunch at a nearby restaurant where the girls took me, and for the sum of 500 baht, we had a great breakfast and then went for coffee at Mike's shopping mall. I remember this all vividly because during all that time, I was trying to look and make a distinction between the two of them and realised I couldn't. Those two were, with that one small difference, identical. Same small hands, same small feet, same smile, same everything. Walking around, we passed by McDonald's twice, but the girls seemed uninterested, which was a bit weird for me. Most Thai girls would want to go and have a McDonald's if possible. I suggested to Jang and Pun that if they would like to spend some more time with me, maybe we go swimming in the pool at the hotel later on. They both said that they didn't have swimsuits, so I offered to buy them swimsuits, Mike's Mall was right there, but they said that we'll go somewhere else with better prices. So after a 15-minute walk, we were shopping at Bacau Market, and then the girls had their eyebrows done at the Grand Hall Market across the road. I spent another 1,000 baht altogether, and that included a very thin, breezy shirt with a dragon embroidered on the left side chest for myself. The girls were not taking me for a shopping spree and were not trying to maximize the financial damage on me. That morning, I put 1,500 baht under each purse. When they jumped out of the shower, they saw the money, they both put their palms together and bowed their heads to me with a Y. I was to find out later that it was their rent for 2 months for the little room where they lived with their grandma and the other sister. We had lunch, after which I suggested ice cream at the Hungry Hippo. It was by now close to 4 p.m. and I suggested we go back to the hotel and rest for a bit in the air-conditioned room, and then we could go for a swim. Pun told me that she would need to stop by and pay her bar fine for the day, and I gave her 500 baht. I went back to the hotel with Jang and we spent the time appropriately, waiting for Pun. When Pun came back, we slept for an hour and then we went to the pool. After a couple of hours of relaxation and some decent water play, we went back to the room, showered together this time. The girls washed me from head to toe and gave me a 4-handed massage. By the way, make it your bucket list. The 4-hand massage is truly a sample of paradise. Later on that evening, we went to Walking Street and had some drinks. This time, no ladies' drinks, but just normal drinks. The Turkish ice cream vendor did his tricks on both of them, and they had laughed, and they both put on a spectacular show for onlookers. At the end of the night, we ate dinner from a street vendor on the beach road. Street food is both cheap and very tasty. In the process, I discovered that the girls were keen on keeping my expenses down. Soon enough, we went into the pattern of me pointing out something, and the two of them would consult with each other, and I'd get either a go ahead or a don't nod from one of them. At midnight, we went back to the hotel, and this time the aerobics commenced almost as soon as we entered the room. During the day, I acquired the nickname of Kundai, which apparently means nice person. The girls used it bypassing my real name. Needless to say, the rest of my stay in Pattaya was spent with these two ladies. My base expenses were 3,500 baht per day, plus tips and food and some small purchases, well within my means. The 5 days of aerobics resulted in a net loss of almost 2 kilos from my body weight, but I promised myself I'd do it again in a heartbeat if I could. The girls would put on a show that would wake up the dead. I did not have the chance to get bored while with them. They always had something to do and would play pranks on each other to the amusement of all of us. Another time they gave me a private dancing show in the hotel, playing traditional Thai Isam music and dancing in step, traditional Thai dance like the ones you see on YouTube. I was amazed by their hands. When dancing, their open palm fingers would bend almost backwards towards the back of their palm, as if they didn't have knuckles. If I fell asleep exhausted, they would let me sleep for a while and then wake me up rubbing my back. For 5 days, I lived in paradise, no question about it. We went to see the Buddha statues, the Sanctuary of Truth. We went to Jomtien Beach and had our feet nibbled by fish in the water tanks, took pictures on top of the hill overlooking Pattaya Bay and got massages together. We even visited their grandma and the sister. The 3 of them were born identical sisters, and the last sister suffered an accident during birth and was less able to provide for herself. While I enjoyed my little slice of heaven with the 2 able sisters, the grandma and their 3rd sister lived in a terrible squalor. I felt horrible, and despite both Pun and Jang's protests, I left 5,000 baht with the grandma. All good things eventually come to an end, and of course, when I left Pattaya, they both cried their eyes out and made me feel terrible on the way back to Suvarnabhumi airport. I left them enough to cover their rent for a year, and for once in my life, I did not feel bad. It was my idea and my choice. It made me happy to do so. Their personalities and company gave me a lifetime of memories. We kept in touch occasionally through the Line app, and 1 year later in 2024, when I could nibble another escape to Pattaya, I again met with Pun. Only this time, Jang had left Thailand, married off to some foreigner. Pun herself was actually going to join them as soon as possible. On Jang's passport, Pun showed me the picture of the guy who had endeavoured to take such a risky undertaking, and I must confess, he was by far more handsome than I'd ever been, even in my prime. Pun was out of the bar dating scene, only occasionally working for ladies' drinks and not going out with clients. The handsome Falang was sending enough to keep her from working in the bar. As for me, I wasn't classified as a customer anymore, and since I qualified as a nice person for Pun, it wasn't like she was doing something wrong and kept me company at night. A couple of times she even brought a friend to substitute for Jang. In closing, Thailand is a land of smiles and dreams for many, but for most it is a land of acceptance and tranquility, and should any of us be blessed to go there, please remember, leave your mean streak at home. Be kind to her people and do not behave like a barbarian. To the guy who made Pun his punching bag, you were very lucky you didn't cross paths. I promise you, I would have made it very hard for you to be recognised, even by your own mother. Now I have a message for guys with problems accepting ladyboys as people. If it isn't a problem for the entire Thai population, why would it be a problem for you, who is just a visitor? Treat people in Thailand like a person you love, and you will receive that love back twicefold. Thanks for reading out my story. Quite a nice story there. Now, the thing is, with the part about the girl getting beat up there, he did mention the race where the guy came from, but unfortunately, this being YouTube, sensitive information, you know, and I can get accused of, I get called a racism, you know, if I even mention any race, you know, I get comments calling me racism, but you have to take a wild guess where the guy came from. Let me just give you a clue and say they cause a lot of trouble on the beach road, and there's been cases where one guy has picked up a girl on the beach road, gone back to the hotel room, and there's been 3 other guys waiting there, okay? That's all I'll say about that. Unfortunately, these girls, you know, they do what they got to do to survive. They come from very poor communities, and there are some horrible people in the world, and a lot of guys take advantage in a really bad way, and guys who do things like beat them up and stuff. I mean, I just can't think of words to describe them. Right, okay, let's jump into story number 2. I am a regular subscriber to your channel and have loved following your stories since the beginning. I'm always amused by your subscribers' comments. Some are constructive, while others are condescending. I am wondering about your thoughts and those of your subscribers on this true story. I am a UK resident and a regular visitor to Thailand, particularly Pattaya, for the last 8 years. I like to spend the winter months in the sunny land of smiles and the summer back in the UK. In my opinion, Thailand is a great country and the people are exceptional when you really get to know them. Kindness and empathy are their main traits. I love Thailand so much that when I do travel there, I usually stay for at least 3 months and sometimes up to 6 months at a time, enjoying not just the country, but also the traditions and people of Thailand. Even after 8 years, I'm still learning their ways. There is one story that has been baffling me and I would like to get it off my chest. When I stay in Thailand, as I mentioned, most of my vacations are spent in Pattaya, specifically at a certain condominium just off Beach Road. I don't want to mention the name of the condominium due to the consequences of what I am about to reveal. Suffice to say, it is a multi-storey block of 13 floors with over 200 self-contained apartments, where most of the rooms are long-stay accommodations for many UK and other European expats, along with a few Americans, Australians and New Zealanders. It is a great place to stay and the rent is very reasonable. The apartments can also be purchased at very good prices. The bonus about the accommodation is that there are bars attached to the property where many gather for a meeting, a game of pool or darts, or just a good conversation. As I mentioned, I would like to name this place, but as this true story unfolds, I'm sure you will understand why I can't. It is now 2025, and this year I have decided not to go back for personal reasons. The deciding factor in my decision was that I experienced on a personal and an emotional level in 2023 on a warm evening, I was having a typical conversation with a few expats and some Thai lady residents who also live in the condominium. These Thai ladies were really good fun to be with and would enjoy our banter and flirting. Nothing serious, just great company. Often they would tease the expats, including the resident ladyboy, and we all enjoyed ourselves immensely. In fact, we all became very attached to these ladies and formed good friendships, far better than going to the open bars along the beach roads and soys where we all know what most of the ladies are after. Either a good time or your money. However, these ladies were different. Some even had long-term sponsors and were not interested in one-night stands. They were all very accommodating and would accept almost anyone into their friendly group. As an outsider, I could see the vulnerability of a couple of the women. As for myself, I have a Thai lady, so perhaps they treated me differently, and some would seek my advice, especially about certain guys who came on to them. Maybe this was the problem in what happened on this occasion. One of the ladies, who I will call Noi, not her real name as I want to keep her identity anonymous, asked me about a certain gentleman from the US. She had taken a liking to him, especially after losing her long-standing sponsor and looking for another. As I explained to her, I did not know this guy and advised her to be careful. Noi was a friendly lady and was well liked within the community. As a sideline, she would cook Thai food and deliver it freshly prepared to any of the apartments within the condominium. She even had a printed menu to choose from. My Thai lady and I often visited her in her apartment, where she would host late night parties, and we became very good friends. It must have been at least 3 months later when Noi took this gentleman into the confidence, and he moved into the condominium on the 6th floor, which faced the square and courtyard of the building. They seemed to be getting along really well, often seen holding hands, laughing and having meals together. In fact, behaving like any loving couple would. Noi was obviously enjoying her newfound man, and nobody thought anything of it. It must have been 4 weeks later when one evening after the bars had closed and most other people had settled into their apartments, I was staying on the 5th floor for 6 months, which was at the back of the condominium. I had just settled into bed with my Thai lady and was falling asleep when I heard a short, loud scream followed by a deafening thud that startled me. Thinking to myself that it was just some late night revellers either fighting or having fun, I went to sleep. The next morning I woke up to find that Noi was dead. She had fallen from her 6th floor apartment onto the courtyard. The police had arrived and the area was cordoned off. By the time I woke up, a few residents had gathered in the cafe below the condominium, all talking about what had happened. Some were in a state of shock and crying. It is strange how the Thais view death differently from us, Farangs, perhaps because of their Buddhist belief that life is a cycle of suffering and rebirth. I was even shown phone pictures of her lifeless body. Nevertheless, I was deeply saddened to find this lovely caring person dead, especially given the circumstances. After the initial shock settled, the following week the police announced that it appeared Noi had fallen off her balcony while in an intoxicated state. She was only in her early 40s, far too young to die. I had seen her intoxicated many times, but never to the extent that she would take such a risk on the edge of her balcony. Things did not add up for me, so I did some digging by asking around about what had happened that fateful night. It is strange how people keep things to themselves, perhaps not wanting to get involved for one reason or the other. Nevertheless, I found out that the loving couple had been drinking and had gotten into a fight that evening in the bar, and they were heard shouting at each other late into the night in their condominium. Did the police look deep enough into this and other circumstances? We will never know. As previously mentioned, the condominium has many expats. One of them, a close friend, told me he had witnessed Noi hanging onto the balcony along with a few others. His apartment was adjacent to Noi's and he had heard the argument. Glancing out of his window, he saw her holding onto the ledge. He thought she was in trouble, so he rushed to help her, but by the time he reached her apartment, she had already fallen. When he opened the apartment door, he found the American man cowering in the corner, saying he had tried to hold on to her, but couldn't. Whether this was true or not, I do not know, but just a week later, this guy left Pattaya and took a plane home. Apparently, he was a very wealthy man, and in my opinion, he found a way to leave very quickly. In fact, too quickly. As my Thai lady informs me, money can buy almost anything here. 2 years have gone by now, and my Thai lady, who is now my wife, and I often reflect on that tragic night. Nothing is ever mentioned within the condominium, but when we go back to Thailand, we will light a candle in Noi's memory, even though time has forgotten her. So this is a big problem in Pattaya, people going off balconies. There's a lot of people who actually commit suicide. Things happen to them. They meet girls, they get scammed, all sorts of things. Older guys, of course, as well as young guys, but mainly older guys. They lose everything, can't particularly dust themselves off and go back and start again because they're too old, and they commit suicide. But there has been a lot of deaths in Pattaya over the years, very strange circumstances, which I'm not going to get into here, but basically people who have gone off balconies in very, very suspicious circumstances. There was, in fact, a YouTuber about 2 years ago who lived on the fourth floor of a condominium block with no security, so anybody could come up and knock the door, and he was found off his balcony in very suspicious circumstances. It's just one of those things that Pattaya is well known for. Right, quite sad stories this week. I'm going to get into story number 3, which is very, very short, and hopefully you'll enjoy this one. I am a regular watcher of your channel, and although I have never been to Thailand, I enjoy the stories. Interestingly enough, your stories mirror an event that happened to me in late summer 2021. After listening to your content, I now think a woman I met in Canada was trying to do exactly what the Thai bar girls do. This just goes to show you that lady scammers exist all over the world. Here is my story. I was between residences in late summer 21 and was staying temporarily in a medium-sized Canadian city. My plan was to be there for 4 weeks before taking a planned work trip to Chile. On my first day in the city, I took a walk and almost immediately a gorgeous looking girl passed me in the opposite direction. I turned around and approached her. She responded with a smile and we struck up a conversation. She claimed to have been in Canada for about 3 years, but had just moved to this city 2 weeks earlier to find work, which she did. She was from a poor French-speaking African country and did not speak English. She had been living in the French-speaking part of Canada before moving west, so her lack of English was understandable. Fortunately, I speak French, so we could communicate. No translator apps for us. We walked around the city and I ended up walking her back to her apartment building. We traded numbers and made plans to see each other again. During our walk, she got a phone call from her mother and told her mum that she was out with her new friend. I did not see it as odd at the time, thinking perhaps it was a cultural to share everything with family, but I certainly would not tell my parents that I was taking a walk with a perfect stranger. A few days later, she actually asked me if I would like to go and meet her parents in Montreal. After hearing your stories, I now think this was red flag number 1, bringing the farang to the village. We started seeing each other regular, but I was definitely not looking for a relationship because I knew I would be leaving for Chile in a few weeks. But I have a real thing for black women. Once you go black, you never go back. And at the time, I was 50 and she was 28. I was not complaining. Thinking back, this was red flag number 2, dating the older farang. She said she was a Christian and did not drink or smoke. I know for sure she attended church every Sunday, but let me tell you, she had no problem getting into the aerobics. After the first few intimate encounters, which happened almost immediately after we met, she asked me for $300 to go to the hairdresser, red flag number 3, asking for money for a personal expense. She wanted to get extensions put in her hair. I had no intentions of giving her cash and told her that my consultant work meant irregular payments from clients and I was not expecting to get any money for a couple of weeks. I told her to check back with me later. The fantastic aerobics continued. A couple of times when we went out, she insisted on bringing her younger cousin along. I never bought the cousin anything except an ice cream cone, but this was red flag number 4. Getting the farang to buy food and drinks for the whole family. After a couple of weeks, she started asking about the $300 for the hairdresser and also wanted me to buy her a laptop, supposedly so she could take an online nursing course. She said the one computer in her apartment was shared by 4 people and would not be adequate for her needs. I gave her the same excuse about waiting for the money. This was red flag number 5. Upping the ante and testing whether the farang was useful for cash. As the week came for me to leave for Chile, I told her I would order the laptop through an online store once I got paid. Yeah, right. She did try to call me a few times though, through WhatsApp while I was in Chile, but I ignored the calls and hoped she would just go away. Once though, I accidentally picked up and she asked me why I had not called her. She had a sad voice and told me she and her younger sister and her cousin had signed a lease for an apartment. Yes, she had been looking for one while I was with her, but her cousin decided not to move and she was now stuck with a 12-month lease that she couldn't afford. I knew what was coming. Can you help me? This was red flag number 6. Asking for monthly support. I hung up the phone and never heard from her again. I should have used the blocking feature earlier. Afterwards, I did not really think too much of the whole liaison because I knew I was leaving the country and did not want a relationship. I thought maybe her demands for money were a cultural thing. Perhaps women in her country rely on men for support. She did have 2 children living with the grandmother back in Africa. Sound familiar? Children back in the village. However, after hearing your bar girl stories, I see the same in her behaviour and that of the Thai bar girls, and now I think she may have been trying to scam me. Another red flag I forgot to mention was that she started love bombing me after just a few days, just like the Thai bar girls. My purpose for writing this story is to alert all men that the bar girl scam can happen anywhere, even in Canada. Quite interesting. So one of the questions I get asked very often, have I ever been scammed by a Thai bar girl? And the answer to that is no, for a couple of reasons. One is, all the time I was in Thailand here, I was married. I was married to a Korean lady for 33 years. Sadly, that didn't last. Have I been scammed by a woman, though? I have once when I was very, very young. I'll briefly tell you the story. So I got on a train to go to London. I think I was 16 or 17 years of age. And going to London, I had a little bit of money on me. And a beautiful girl, probably 5 years older than me, got into the carriage with me. It was a carriage, in those days they had the first class carriages and I just snuck in. I didn't really have a first class ticket. And she was there as well. She was sitting opposite me. I was on this side. Very, very beautiful, probably about 22, 23 like this. And she had a London accent, so looking back on it, I think she did this quite often. So we got into conversation. She was very forthcoming, and she happened to mention that she'd lost £10 and she needed the £10, which is about $12, to get back home. And would I be able to lend her it and leave my name and address, and she'd post it back to me as soon as she got back to London. And of course, being very naive at the time and being kind of smitten by this beautiful lady opposite me, I gave her the £10. You know what's coming next. Of course, I never ever heard from her again. And yeah, I got scammed. That was a one time. Other than having extra bills put in my bill cup in bars in the early days. Other than that, not really. Okay, right. Thank you for listening to my stories today, or your stories, I should say, not my stories. Guys, if you're sitting on a story, I'd love to read it out for you. I will change names. I'll make it anonymous, and you too can have your story read out right here on Thailand Bound. Thanks for listening again, and I'll catch you next Saturday with some more stories.